Cyber technical route. Here we have Nancy Laney, who's the owner of Peak IT Security Solutions. Nancy has 30 years of design and implementation experience, and before launching Peak IT, she worked as a IT consultant, director, program manager, new construction IT project manager, and healthcare fields. And here she is to speak about threats in IT and OT. Nancy.
All right. Hi there. How you guys? The FBI guy must still be going downstairs in the auditorium. All right, so welcome everyone. Today we're going to get started. Who in here is in the manufacturing industry? Anybody? We got a small group here. Where are you?
Clients. I'm a crisis communications firm. We have some manufacturing clients in the semiconductor space.
Oh, great. Okay.
I work in a national lab, and so I see operational technology in all kinds of weird ways. So Lawrence Berkeley Lab, and so they have all kinds of stuff in their science facilities.
All right, great. All right, how about you?
I support them.
You support them? All right, so we're going to jump in and get started. So we're going to look at a few statistics about what the current state of technology is. How much legacy technology do you guys have in your environments today?
Yes.
So much. We are seeing at least 60% of legacy technology, meaning systems that are no longer getting updates. And this is real. The electricity guy, if you guys were in here earlier for David, when he was talking about getting funding, the problem is real. We're going to talk about that a bit more today. So we're going to also look at formal incident response plans. Only 35% in the industry have formal incident response plans. And when we look a little bit later about what the threats are, you're going to see how this plays into that. 25% offer formal cybersecurity training to their employees. Now, interesting enough, when I saw one study from KnowBe4, who's kind of like the Cadillac of cybersecurity training, security awareness training. They said that in a phishing campaign in the education industry, teachers failed 30% of the time when they had a phishing campaign. After training, they only failed 5% of the time. So even if you don't do a lot, anything will help because they're our last defense. So less than half have segmentation in their networks. That segmentation is going to provide layers of security. So you're going to want to be looking at that. And then when we look at how many have had actual cyber disruption, 25% have reported disruption to their production operations due to a cyber attack. So when we look at what the current state of manufacturing is, we can see, and if we look at these numbers, we can see on average, 25%, a quarter to a third are doing the right things, are getting the investment in technology, are putting those best practices into place. And 2/3 are really struggling. They're struggling with technology debt, they're struggling with legacy systems, and struggling with funding. When we look at why this is so important, we really look at the manufacturing, and they are part of the supply chain for the defense industry. There's so much of that industry that is in the Pacific Northwest that cybersecurity is critical to our defense secrets and to that intellectual property and to these projects that support the defense industry. And so that's why when we look at manufacturing in general, we really have to focus on what we can do to protect this, to protect our secrets, because this is ultimately protecting our armed forces. And so the why is really big. So when we look at the current state, we have a long ways to go. So what are some of the threats to operational technology and to IT? So one of the interesting things, and David brought it up earlier, the guy that did the electricity thing about the funding, 60% of small and medium business owners do not believe that they're a threat. And yet, 65% of the boards believe that there is a high cyber risk. So when you look at who's funding the projects, but yet look at what the risk is, one of the biggest challenges that he presented and he talked about was getting funding and getting buy-in that this needs to be addressed. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. Earlier, there was only 25% that had a formal incident response plan, and yet when we look at this, only 14% feel prepared to defend against a cyber attack. This is critical when you start thinking about the attacks, and we'll look at some numbers later. When we look at some of the industry statistics, 30% of the vulnerabilities exploited were due to server misconfigurations. So that goes back to looking at that physical layer, looking at how we have that implemented. Data breaches, 95% due to human error, and yet when we look at the threat actors, it's primarily for monetary gain, but we know that, that's ransomware, right? So let's look and talk about the hardware and this physical layer. Our goal here today is really talk about the physical layer and what we can do to help advance in our cybersecurity posture. So when we look at technology debt and how I frame that is anything that you've done that you really need to, that you've kicked the can down the road. If you have legacy servers, who in here has a server, a 2003, 2008, 2012, 2012 R2? 2012, yep. So 2012 R2 is no longer getting security updates, right? You got to pay for it, okay. So that's technology debt. That's kicking the can down the road. That's having systems in your environment that are no longer supported. I've seen systems and environments where they were still running business critical functions on a 2003 server. And that's within the last 12 months. So when you start looking at this technology debt, it really starts to loom big. And what happens is you find it harder and harder to figure out an upgrade path, to figure out where to migrate those applications to. So how do you get investment? How do you get leadership to buy into the need to do this? One of the things that I've done, David posed the question really good because it is a struggle. How many of you guys in here struggle with getting the funding you need for cyber projects, IT projects, just normal maintenance upgrade? It's a fight for every single dollar you get. So here's a couple of strategies that I've seen, that I've personally used that have worked. One is, whenever the company is investing, if you guys are in manufacturing, what's one thing they're going to spend money on in the next 5 years? A robot. Everybody's buying robots right now to do some of that manual labor. So if they're opening their wallet to implement some type of automation, some type of a robot, mechanical system, make sure that you partner with the business and you bring in the technology you need. One of the things I've always done is looked at my environment and what are the top 10 highest priorities that I need. I always have that list available with a budgetary estimate of what it's going to take to address that. Whether you're looking at CapEx or OpEx, when you get to the end of the year, sometimes other departments may not get their projects done and there's capital money available. Have that ready to go. If you get a phone call saying, do you need anything, have that priority list. If you have projects that got delayed or got canceled, then repurpose that operation money into doing upgrades, whether they're desktops or software. Look at different ways how you can leverage. One of the things I've seen is if you have investments in technology and you've fully implemented it and you've gotten all of your return on investment out of it, you're going to have more trust with the executives on being able to invest more in technology. So technology debt is a real challenge. Start with an inventory everything on your network. Always know what is the oldest piece of technology and start figuring out ways to upgrade it and remove it. Develop priorities. The strategies, we talked a little bit about what are some of the future investments in the business. Partner with those business partners. If they're putting in a new ERP system, if they're doing any strategy planning in the business, latch onto that, partner with it, and bring your IT budget in line with what they're doing and include your needs with those budgets. The other thing is you want to leverage everything you have in the environment. I've seen organizations that have bought things and not fully implemented it. They have a sand spinning that never got implemented. They have switches, really nice switches in odd locations. So look at what you have in your environment. The other thing that I would recommend, if you have a piece of equipment die, let's take a switch for example, and it's a layer 2 switch out somewhere, replace it with a layer 3 switch, even if that's not the end place for it, but always be buying up if you have technology debt in your environment. So don't replace it with a layer 3. There's a lot of easy ways you can economically start doing this. And so every time the business is opening their wallet to purchase something, make sure you're adding in some IT budget for that. The other thing is document. I know documentation is a challenge. It's one of the hardest things to spend your time doing. But every piece of documentation that you do in your environment, tomorrow's self is going to thank you. It just is, I can't say enough about documenting your environment. Document. All right, patching. Who here is patched within 30 days of your environment, everything is patched in your environment within 30 days? All right, good. Patching is a bear sometimes. If you can move your patching to be automated, we've implemented programs where you start out on Patch Tuesday with patching your servers that are the lowest priority, your IT utility servers, things like that. Patch those first, test it, then start patching your business ones, move that to automated, get those jobs scheduled, and that's going to take making patching more consistent. The goal here is to be consistent. Interesting statistic, it's like a crazy number, 80 to 85% of vulnerabilities that are exploited have a patch available that would have prevented it. So if you need a reason to patch, that's your reason. 80 to 85% of vulnerabilities have a patch available. So make sure you're patching. Automate it, we talked about that. Relentless, you gotta be relentless about your patching. All right, so next we're gonna talk about incident response. Earlier in our statistics, only 25% had an incident response plan, and yet 15 or 17% only felt prepared to defend against an attack. How many here have a formal written incident response plan? Okay, good. We've got some. We're going to talk a little bit about that today in a little bit of detail to kind of give you some ideas on how to get started. There's quite a few resources out there. The first thing is preparation. If you have cybersecurity insurance, one of the things that you want to do is reach out to your insurance broker, set a call up with the breach attorney who they contract with, and talk to that breach attorney, find out what resources they're going to provide you when you have an event. Not if, but when. So the interesting thing is the breach attorney is going to have a specific protocol that they're going to follow. They're going to have forensics investigators available. They may have communications folks available. If you don't know what those resources are or how to communicate with those groups, you're going to struggle and you're going to feel like the whole burden of the incident is on your shoulders. So you want to bring those in and document that. They're going to have a legal response, and they're going to help you understand what your legal liability is in an incident. So reach out to them if you have cyber insurance during that preparation phase. During preparation, you're also going to want to create checklists for your team, understanding what's in your environment. You want to identify certain things that are, like, for example, you want to have some documentation like your IP ranges, your server configurations, your physical and logical documentation of your environment. So as you're seeing inappropriate or unusual behavior, the team has documents to try and track down what the path is, where this is coming from. And you're going to need to know what those, what your network configuration is to be able to do that efficiently. When an incident happens, you're going to go into detection and analysis phase. And in this phase, in your incident response plan, you want to have a checklist for your team to go through, because you don't want to just respond to the actual incident. You want to have some additional checking to make sure that the environment is contained. When you've done your detection, you're obviously going to move into containment, eradication, and recovery. And in there, you're going to have certain other checklists and tools that you're going to want to use. And so these two categories, you may go back and forth. You may think you've contained it and then find out you didn't completely contain it, and so you need to go back and do some more detection. And so in your incident response plan, understanding that the incident response plan is a framework designed to handle any type of incident. So it's generic in that it can address an incident where it's just a single device involved, all the way up through your whole network is encrypted. So then once you've gone through eradication, recovery, and you've completed the incident, in the recovery phase of it, there are a couple of other things to consider. We talked a little bit about your breach attorney. One of the reasons why it's so important to speak to your breach attorney before you have an incident is that protects all communication for that incident under work product. If you've had that communication first and established work product for him, then even notification is protected under attorney-client privilege, where if you haven't had any contact, it may not be covered. Now, during these phases of the project, you're also going to have communication protocols. You're going to want to make sure you're communicating with your executives. You're going to want to be able to articulate to your executives how serious and how much is impacted, and from what levels, from a data perspective, from an infrastructure perspective, and from a business perspective. What is the impact? You're also going to want to have communication templates for communicating to all of your vendors, your clients, if you're in healthcare patients, if you're in, depending on what kind of customer you serve, you're going to need to be able to have templates available to communicate to them, to vendors, to employees, to providers, and to partners. It's going to be important. My personal philosophy is that you're transparent with what is going on. We've seen in the news companies that have poorly communicated or have not communicated until regulatory deadlines, like 60 days later. I think you develop better trust with your partners and your business partners if you don't have to go into a lot of detail, but be clear about what's happening. Once you've gone through and completed your incident report, in some industries, you're going to have regulatory reporting. If you're doing Department of Defense contracts, you have 72 hours to report an incident, and you have a couple dozen data points you have to report. If you are in HIPAA, you have to report on the wall of shame. If you're in Oregon, you have to, if it's over 250 individuals that have their PII exposed, you have to send a letter off to the Inspector General, or the Attorney General, sorry. So understand and know what your regulatory reporting requirements are and who your resources are. So I spent a little bit of time talking about this because it doesn't take much to put an incident response plan together, and then you're going to want to take everything you learn from that and then improve your systems. What could have been done to prevent this? What could we have done in the incident to handle it better, to communicate better, to respond quicker, to contain it faster? So an incident response plan is something that your tomorrow self will appreciate you for. All right, so at the top of the list, after doing an incident response plan, or even before, is doing backups. Who's here familiar with the 32110 backup nomenclature? Okay, so 3 is you need to have 3 copies of your data in addition to your live copy. 2 is you need to have it stored in 2 different media, in the cloud, on tape, 2 different media. 1 is you need to have it air-gapped, and the other one is you need to have it off-site. I had one situation where the off-site copy was within the Golden Mile, so all of their data was within 1 square mile. You don't want to have all of your data within 1 square mile. that is a humongous risk. So start thinking about where that data resides and how you're going to access it in an issue. And zero means zero errors. That means your backups are happening, you're monitoring them, and there's no errors and no failures. You want to make sure that these backups are rock solid. If you can afford it, look at vendors that are providing immutable backups. That means backups that a threat actor, if they're inside, cannot destroy. And I've tested them, and you can't destroy a backup that's been set as immutable. So if you can invest in that, I know there's some vendors that have tools available for that. Do what you can, but make sure you have air-gapped backups and immutable if you can. The other thing to think about is what can you do to help the business in the event of an outage. So you're going to want to find low-tech solutions to help them be self-sufficient while you're having an outage and be able to still offer and provide services for those services that are absolutely critical. And then documentation. The last part of incident response that I didn't talk about was drilling. One of the most important parts that you can do for incident response is train your staff and do drills and do tabletop exercises. If you guys go to play.backdoorsandbreaches.com, you will find a website there which has gamified a tabletop drill. And it looks like this. So go there. It's got the little dice. You spin the dice over here, and you roll a d20, and then depending on that, you get cards to play, and you have actions and skills, and it gamifies it and makes it fun. So you don't want the tabletop drill and the exercise to be mind-numbing. You want it to be engaging, and you want folks. And so this is a fun way to do it. So the network, we're going to talk a little bit about network segmentation. Firewalls and ports, you want to make sure that your firewall and ports are all locked down. I have a personal opinion that we've seen such a rise in denial of service attacks that you don't want to host your public website internally. I know you can. My recommendation is you host it somewhere else. If you have an attack on your public website, your production environment is not impacted. If you have an attack on your website and you're hosting it, your internal production is going to be impacted. So separate those two. It's not terribly expensive. It can be done. The other thing from an OT perspective, a lot of manufacturing have CNC, production machines. A lot of these are part of that technology debt that are legacy systems that are not getting updated. I've seen a lot of really old systems on there. So you want to segment those. You want to implement some VLANs. You want to be able to protect that, put some access control lists in, and document. Endpoints, I'm not going to go into a lot of time. We're running a little bit late here. But you do want to, full disk encryption, for example, is an easy thing, no cost. A lot of these suggestions up here that we have are ways to secure your environment that really are not going to cost you hardly anything. It's mostly just configuration. We don't need personal software on laptops. I've seen all sorts of stuff. I know, and a lot of times it's on the executives, right? Antivirus, and make sure you have antivirus on your servers. I've gone into environments where they have antivirus on everything but the servers. So make sure you have that. Or it was turned off because they were troubleshooting something. That would never happen, would it? Believe me, we've seen quite a few things. We're going to talk just a little bit about users. Users are our human shield. They are the last defense. They are what stands between you and the next click, right? So train them and train them often. If you can afford KnowBe4, they've got good training stuff. It's kind of expensive. If you can't afford KnowBe4, go on YouTube. There's training videos on YouTube. Make your own training video that's pertinent to your environment. Do personal training. Users love being able to hear from you because you're passionate. You can talk to them in their language. They can relate to you. Help, show them how to hover over links. Show them how to look at all of the froms and how many ways they trick you. Show them all those red flags. Teach them how to be alert. Teach them that you'd rather them forward something to you or delete it and not click on it. Teach them that you would rather look at it with them than have them click on it. If they're not sure, call. Because that one phone call is what's going to save you. Who knows what the number is on passwords that get hacked? It's like 60 or 65 breaches. It is crazy. Turn on fine-grained password policies. Make them more than 8 characters, you guys. Make them 15. If you can make them 15, make them 15. The other thing that I will tell you right now is give them a password manager. Bitwarden has free ones. I love Bitwarden personally. Bitwarden is beautiful. It will help change your life. Use Bitwarden as part of your disaster recovery plan. Put all of your service accounts and AD accounts and all of that into Bitwarden. That's part of your disaster recovery plan. Also, too, you want to do separation of privileges. If you're in IT, don't be using your domain account to do your surfing on the web. You know, IT has to lead by example. Make sure you have separation of privileges, and of course, we couldn't talk about cybersecurity if we didn't say 2FA. Turn it on everywhere. If you've got 2FA available, turn it on. Okay. I want to show you guys. This kind of goes to the, is the electricity guy in here? All right. Is he in here? No. Oh, no? Okay. This is his slide. So this is the power grid. This is a utility. I want you guys to understand this. This is, 5 years ago, in the first quarter of the year, there were 8 attacks. In the first 12 weeks. That means there was less than one per week. They haven't released all the data, but the first quarter of this year, we had 62 in the first quarter, which means we had 1 every day. We had 5 per week. The threat is real. We have to get in front of this. We need incident response plans. We need to protect our environments. We need to get network segmentation in place. The threat is real. So, I don't know about you guys. I've come to dozens of cybersecurity training, cybersecurity conferences, cybersecurity everything. And you know what happens? I come home from these conferences and I don't sleep for 3 days. Right? How many of you guys are going to stay awake tonight thinking about all the threats and all the things in your environment that need to be fixed? So, I want you guys to make your list of if you were 1 day away. Some of this is basic stuff, but if you were 1 day away, here are the top 10 things I would do if I was 1 day away from getting attacked. Number 1, I'd make sure I have good backups that I've tested, that are solid, that are immutable, that are air gap, that are off-site. I would start patching relentlessly. And when I say relentlessly, everything on my network, I would start patching. And if I can't patch it, I'm going to make a plan to get it to a place I can patch it. Upgrade everything to current versions. Chrome. Critical CVE of 10 this week. Come on, we have to get current on some of these things. Make sure your antivirus is up to date, connected, and running. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen AV on a server turned off and never turned back on. And that was 38% of vulnerabilities was misconfigurations on servers. 2FA on everything. Strong passwords with your password manager. Network segmentation. Some of these things we've already talked about. But seriously, these are the top 10 things I would do. Make sure you have an incident response plan. Start building it. Do a little bit every week if you can't sit down and just dedicate a day to get it done. Pingcastle and Testimo are tools. They're free. Go out and run them against your AD. They're going to give you 4 dozen issues that are in your AD environment and things you can do to strengthen and secure your Active Directory. And then if you guys have Microsoft ATP, go into Microsoft ATP and export their security recommendations and start working it. Sort it from highest exposure, descending, and start with the things at the top of the list. All right, you guys, I am going to leave you with one more statistic. Who knows what that is? Huh? The cost? Oh, nope. It is the number of open cybersecurity jobs in 2023 waiting to be filled. We need each and every one of you guys to be engaged, to join the force, to fight the good fight. Thank you.